my parents took me to court for buying a house. That house belongs to your sister. They did not expect my response. Hi, I'm Brenda. I never thought my own parents would drag me to court over a house I purchased with my own hard-earned money, but here we are. 4 months ago, I finally had enough saved for a down payment on a charming colonial in Riverside Heights, the neighborhood I've been dreaming about for years. After 6 years working as a software architect at TechCore Solutions, I'd scraped together every penny, cutting back on vacations, eating homemade lunches, and driving my beat-up Honda Civic long past its prime. Brenda, sweetheart, we're so proud of you. Mom gushed over dinner the night, I told them. Her famous pot roast sitting between us. Your father and I never managed to buy property until our late 40s. Dad nodded, setting down his glass of sweet tea. Smart investment. Property values in Riverside Heights have been climbing steadily for the past 5 years. You made the right choice, kiddo. My younger sister, Lauren, smiled tightly from across the table. Yeah, congrats. Must be nice having that tech salary while some of us are still paying off grad school loans. Come on, Lauren, I said, trying to keep the mood light. You're doing amazing at Morrison and Associates. That paralegal position is just the beginning. You'll get there. Dad cleared his throat, his fork pausing halfway to his mouth. Speaking of property, Brenda, you remember the discussions we had about family assets a couple years back? I blinked. What discussions? Mom and Dad exchanged one of those looks, the kind that made my stomach twist, even though I couldn't quite understand why. Never mind, Mom said quickly, her smile a little too bright. This is your celebration dinner. Who wants pecan pie? 3 weeks later, I was at the closing table with my realtor, Sandra Kim, signing what felt like 1,000 documents. Congratulations, Brenda Sandra said warmly, sliding the deed across the polished mahogany table. How does it feel to be a homeowner? Surreal, I replied, my hand trembling slightly as I signed my name with a flourish. Good. Surreal, though. Any big renovation plans? Nothing major. Maybe refinish the hardwood floors, update the bathroom fixtures. My phone buzzed insistently in my purse. I glanced down to see 3 missed calls from my best friend Natalie and a text that made my blood run cold. Call me now. Your sister just posted something insane on Instagram about your house. I'm so sorry, Sandra. I need to take this. 25 minutes later, I was sitting in Natalie's living room, staring at her laptop, screen in complete disbelief, reading Lauren's Instagram post for the 4th time. When your parents promised you your grandmother's inheritance money for a house, but your sister somehow swoops in and buys one first. Betrayed family. Drama. Nauseous, I muttered, my hands shaking. Natalie leaned forward on her leather couch, concern etched across her face. You told me the house isn't connected to your grandmother's money, right? Not at all. I saved every single penny myself. Grandma and Grandpa left some money when they passed, but that was divided equally between me and Lauren 3 years ago. I used mine to pay off my student loans and build an emergency fund. Then what the hell is she talking about? My phone rang. Dad's name flashed across the screen. I put the phone on speaker, my hand trembling. Hello, Brenna. We need to talk. Dad's voice sounded unnaturally formal, almost robotic. Your mother and I have consulted our attorney about the situation regarding your house purchase. What situation? I demanded, feeling Natalie's hand grip my shoulder. What are you talking about? The funds that were designated for Lauren's future home? He said coldly. We've always been clear that your grandmother wanted her inheritance to go toward Lauren's first house. Since you received the larger portion for your education, my mouth fell open. That's absolutely not true. I never heard anything about this arrangement, and Grandma split everything 50-50. I have the documentation. We discussed this extensively when you were both in grad school. Mom chimed in from the background, her voice tight. Lauren was supposed to get the house fund. It was understood. I bought this house with my savings from my job, I said, my voice rising with each word. I didn't use any inheritance money. I can prove every single deposit came from my paychecks at Tech. Nevertheless, Dad continued, his tone icy. We believe you were aware of the family arrangement and deliberately went against it. Well, be filing a petition with the court tomorrow morning. Our lawyer, Bernard Hamilton, will be in contact with you. The line went dead. I stared at the phone, my mind racing. Nellie's eyes were wide with shock. Did your parents just threaten to sue you over a house you bought with your own money? She asked slowly. I nodded, still processing what had just happened. Apparently, they think I somehow stole Lauren's inheritance. But Natalie, I swear to you on everything, there was never any arrangement like that. Not once in my entire life did anyone mention this. Then why would they? Because, came a voice from the hallway. It was Derek, Nellie's boyfriend and a junior attorney at Crawford and Associates downtown. He'd apparently been listening from the kitchen. They probably want the house for your sister, and they're using this inheritance story as leverage to pressure you into giving it up or selling it to her. He walked over and sat down on the coffee table across from us, his expression serious. Brenda, I'm going to be straight with you. You're going to need a really good lawyer because from what I just overheard, your family's about to wage war. The next morning, I sat in a sleek conference room at Thompson Legal Group, meeting with Victoria Brennan, an attorney Derek had recommended who specialized in family property disputes and estate law. So, your parents are claiming there was a verbal agreement that your sister would receive funds specifically for purchasing a home? Victoria asked, making notes on her tablet with swift, precise strokes. Yes, but no such agreement ever existed, I insisted, fighting to keep my voice steady. I use my own savings from 6 years of working as a software architect. I can prove every dollar came from my paychecks. I have bank statements, tax returns, everything. Victoria nodded approvingly. That's excellent. What about the inheritance from your grandparents? How exactly was that distributed? It was split evenly between me and Lauren. We each received $42,000. Lauren used hers to buy a new Lexus and take a trip to Europe with her friends. I used mine to pay off my student loans and start an emergency fund. Was there any documentation in the will stating specific purposes for how the inheritance should be used? Victoria asked, leaning forward. No, I said firmly. The will simply divided everything between me and Lauren equally. New conditions, no stipulations about houses or anything else. Victoria tapped her stylus against her tablet thoughtfully. Your parents' case sounds extremely weak from a legal standpoint, but family courts can be unpredictable. Judges sometimes try to find middle ground even when there isn't one. We need to understand their exact claim and gather compelling. Later that afternoon, I called my uncle, Gerald, my father's younger brother who lived in Phoenix. Brenda, how's the new house treating you? He answered cheerfully. Your Aunt Carol and I are planning to visit next month. Actually, Uncle Gerald, that's kind of why I'm calling. Did Dad ever mention any arrangement about Lauren getting Grandma's inheritance specifically for a house? A long pause followed. I could hear traffic in the background. No, he finally said slowly. But your dad has always favored Lauren. You know that, honey. Ever since she was born, she could do no wrong in his eyes, but nothing specific about inheritance money being earmarked for her to buy a house. Not that I recall. Why are you asking? I took a deep breath. They're taking me to court, Uncle. Gerald. They're claiming I somehow stole Lauren's house money. What? That's absolutely ridiculous. His voice rose sharply. Brenda, listen to me carefully. There was never any such arrangement in your grandparents' will. I was there when the attorney read it at Grandpa's office. Everything was split 50-50. Period. Would you be willing to sign an affidavit stating that absolutely your grandmother would be horrified by what they're doing? She always treated you both equally. That was important to her. My next call was to Aunt Diane, who had lived with my grandparents during their final years, helping care for them. Oh, Brenda, she sighed heavily after I explained the situation. I was afraid. Something like this might happen. My heart started pounding. What do you mean your father approached your grandparents about changing their will too? Give Lauren a larger share about 8 months before your grandmother passed away. He wanted them to earmark money specifically for Lauren's future home. Your grandmother refused. Point blank, I gripped the phone. Tighter Dad tried to get them to change the will, yes. He claimed Lauren needed more help because her career prospects weren't as strong as yours, but you had your tech job and didn't need as much support. Your grandmother was furious. She said both her granddaughters were getting equal shares and she wouldn't play favorites. She told him that if he couldn't accept that, he didn't have to be present at the will reading. Why didn't you tell me this before? I didn't want to cause family drama, Aunt Diane said quietly. But if they're taking you to court with this fabricated story, someone needs to tell the truth. Would you need me to testify about this? Conversation, if it comes to that. Would you be willing to? Of course, sweetheart. Your grandmother would want me to. I've got your back. My final stop was my cousin Taylor's apartment in the city. She and Lauren had always been close, practically sisters growing up. I don't want to get involved in this, Taylor said immediately after opening her apartment door, her arms crossed defensively. I just need to understand what's happening. I pleaded. Please, Taylor. We've known each other our whole lives. She sighed heavily and stepped aside. Fine, come in, but I'm not taking sides. We sat at our small kitchen table, mugs of coffee growing cold between us as the afternoon light filtered through her blinds. Lauren's been talking about that house in Riverside Heights for almost a year. Taylor finally admitted, not meeting my eyes. She said your parents promised to help her buy it once she made associate at Morrison and Associate. My stomach dropped. The exact house I bought. Taylor nodded uncomfortably. She had a whole Pinterest board for renovations, custom kitchen, master bathroom remodel, the works. When she found out you'd bought it, she completely lost it. She called me crying for 3 hours straight. But Taylor, that house was never promised to her. I didn't even know she was interested in it. I found it through my own realtor search. Maybe not explicitly promised, Taylor said, fidgeting with her coffee mug. But your parents have always given Lauren whatever she wanted. Remember when she wanted that Lexus? They co-signed the loan, even though she couldn't really afford it. When she wanted to go to Europe, they gave her extra money beyond the inheritance. I think they just assumed they could arrange something with your grandparents' money to make this happen. 2, but there was no specific house money for Lauren in the inheritance. The will was clear. Try telling that to your sister, Taylor muttered. She's convinced herself that money was rightfully hers. She keeps saying, you betrayed the family. I leaned forward, desperate. Taylor, I need allies here. My own family is trying to take away something I worked 6 years to afford. Taylor met my eyes, and I saw genuine conflict there. I'll tell you what I know, Brenda. I'll tell you the truth, but I won't testify against them in court. I can't. Lauren's my cousin too, and my mom would never forgive me. Fair enough. Just tell me this. Have you ever heard anyone besides my parents or Lauren mention this supposed arrangement about house money? Never, Taylor said firmly, shaking her head. Not once. Not from your grandparents when they were alive. Not from any other relatives. This all started after your grandmother died, when your dad started talking about how Lauren needed more help. As I drove back to Natalie's place where I'd been staying since this nightmare began, I called Victoria. I think I understand what happened, I told her, my hands gripping the steering wheel tightly. My parents promised my sister my house, or at least a house, without having the means to deliver. Now they're trying to fix their mistake by taking mine from me. Then let's make absolutely certain they fail, Victoria replied, her voice sharp with determination. Meet me tomorrow morning at 9. We're going to build a defense they can't tear down. 1 week later, we gathered for a court-ordered mediation at Thompson Legal Group's conference room. My parents, Lauren, and their attorney, Bernard Jamudo, sat across from Victoria and me. The tensions so thick I could barely breathe. We're here because my daughter stole her sister's rightful inheritance, Dad declared before the mediator, Mr. Simmons. Could even begin the proceedings? Hamilton slid a folder across the polished table. We have documentation of the verbal agreement regarding Lauren's inheritance. Allocation for the specific purpose of purchasing a home. Documentation of a verbal agreement. Victoria raised an eyebrow. That's contradictory by definition. Witness statements, Hamilton clarified smoothly, from family members present during these discussions. I grabbed the folder and flipped it open. Inside were statements from my parents, Lauren and Aunt Helen, my mother's sister, who I'd barely spoken to in 5 years and who hadn't even attended Grandma's funeral. Brenda, honey, Mom said softly, her eyes pleading. You know that money was meant for your sister's house. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. I met her gaze steadily. No, Mom. There was never any such arrangement. You're lying. How dare you call us liars? Lauren snapped, her face flushing. Red, we talked about this for years. Everyone knew. We never did, I replied, keeping my voice leveled despite my racing heart. Not once. You're rewriting history because you never listen. Lauren's voice rose sharply. You've always been so wrapped up in your perfect tech job and your perfect savings plan. You never cared about what I needed. Dad leaned forward, his expression hardening. Brenda, be reasonable. Your sister needs this house more than you do. You can find another one. You make good money. That's what this is really about, I said, the realization crystallizing, not some imaginary agreement. You promised Lauren something that wasn't yours to give, and now you're trying to take it from me to cover your mistake. Lauren slammed her hand on the conference table, making the water glasses jump. It's not a lie. Grandma always said I would get help with the house. She told me that herself then? Why isn't it in her will? I demanded. Why did she refuse when Dad asked her to change it? The room fell into shocked silence. Hamilton glanced at my parents with surprise. Victoria smoothly presented our evidence folder. We have signed affidavit from Gerald Reynolds and Diane Porter, both present at the will reading, confirming no such arrangement existed. We also have complete bank records showing every dollar of Brenda's down. Payment came from her earned income at TechCore Solutions over 6 years. Not 1 cent came from inheritance money. This isn't about the money source, Hamilton argued, recovering his composure. It's about family agreements and expectations. It's about my parents promising my sister my grandparents' money without their knowledge or consent. I interrupted, and when Grandma refused to change her will, they decided to fabricate this story to take my house. Brenda. Mom's voice cracked. We're your family. We're just trying to make things right. Right? For who? I asked. Not for me. Not for Grandma and Grandpa who wanted us treated equally. You could just buy another house, Lauren suggested suddenly, her tone shifting to something almost pleading. I've been dreaming about that specific house for 2 years. The neighborhood, the layout, everything. Please, Brenda, I stared at my sister. This person who was supposed to be my ally, my friend, and felt something inside me break completely. You mean the sister who posted lies about me on social media before even talking to me? I said coldly. The sister who's trying to steal something I worked 6 years to afford. Dad's face darkened, his jaw clenching. This isn't who we raised you to be, Brenda. You raised me to work hard, save money, and be honest. I shot back. What happened to those values? Enough. Dad slammed his fist on the table, making everyone jump. Well, let a judge decide this. As they stood to leave, Dad pointed directly at me. You're making a catastrophic mistake. I have connections in this town. Brenda, colleagues, friends, and important places. By the time we're done, you'll wish you'd never bought that house. Is that a threat? Victoria asked sharply, her pen poised over her notepad. It's a promise, he replied before storming out, Mom and Lauren following behind him. Hamilton gathered his papers quickly, avoiding eye contact. The mediator sighed heavily. I think we can safely say mediation has failed. 3 months later, we gathered in the county courthouse. The time between had been brutal. Dad had followed through on his threat, spreading rumors about me in professional circles, claiming I'd stolen from family. Lauren had shown up at my house twice, once trying to use a key she'd somehow obtained, which resulted in a trespassing charge that significantly weakened their case. Judge Patricia Thornton, a stern woman in her 60 seconds, with silver hair pulled back in, a tight bun, addressed the courtroom after hearing both sides present their arguments. I've reviewed all the evidence presented, she began, her voice cutting through the silent courtroom. The will of Margaret and Harold Stevens divided their estate equally between their 2 granddaughters with no stipulations or conditions. There is no written evidence of any verbal agreement regarding Lauren Reynolds receiving funds specifically for a home purchase. She continued adjusting her glasses. Furthermore, Brenda Reynolds purchased her property at 847 Maple Drive using verifiably earned income from her employment. Bank records confirm this unequivocally. My heart pounded as she paused. I find the plaintiff's conduct deeply troubling, particularly the attempted unauthorized entry to the defendant's property, which resulted in criminal trespassing charges. The case is dismissed with prejudice. Ms. Brenda Reynolds is entitled to recoup reasonable legal fees from the plaintiffs. The gavel came down with a sharp crack. Outside the courthouse, Natalie hugged me tightly as my family approached across the parking lot. Brenda, please, Mom said, reaching for my arm with trembling hands. We need to talk as a family. We can fix this. I stepped back, putting space between us. We tried that, you chose a courtroom instead? We made a mistake. Dot admitted, his voice strained. We got caught up in trying to help Lauren. You thought you could bully me into giving up what I earned. I interrupted. Lauren stepped forward, her eyes red and swollen from crying. I'm sorry, Brenda. I genuinely thought that house was supposed to be mine. I thought you knew and bought it anyway, because they told you that, I said, feeling the anger drain away, replaced by exhaustion and sadness. They made promises they had no right to make and couldn't keep. Can't we move past this? Mom pleaded, her voice breaking. We're family. Families forgive each other. Family doesn't drag each other to court over fabricated stories, I replied quietly. Family doesn't threaten each other or try to break into each other's homes. Family doesn't spread professional rumors to damage each other's careers. So that's it, Dad demanded, his face flushing. You're throwing away 32 years of family over one disagreement. This wasn't a disagreement, Dad. It was a betrayal, I said firmly, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. And yes, some things can't be undone. Some lines once crossed change everything. What do you want? From us, Lauren asked desperately, an apology money. I said, I'm sorry, what more can I do? I don't want anything from you anymore. I said quietly, that's the point. I just want to move forward with my life. Victoria approached from behind me, her heels clicking on the courthouse steps. My client's friends are waiting to celebrate. You should leave now. This isn't the end of this conversation, Dad insisted, his voice rising. Actually, it is, Victoria interjected coolly. My client has a restraining order prepared and ready to file if there are any further attempts at contact or harassment. I suggest you consult with Mr. Hamilton about the implications. That evening, my true support system gathered at my house. Natalie and Derek, Uncle Gerald, who had flown in from Phoenix, Aunt Diane, and close friends from work. We sat in the living room. I'd painted soft blue, eating takeout from Luigi's Italian kitchen, laughing and sharing stories. A toast, Uncle, Gerald announced, raising his glass of wine, to Brenda, who stood her ground when it would have been easier to fold. Your grandparents would be incredibly proud. I still can't believe they actually took you to court, Natalie said, shaking her head. Your own parents? What will you do now? Aunt Diane asked gently. They're still your family, despite everything. I looked around at the people who had stood by me through everything, who had believed me, supported me, testified for me. Family isn't just about blood, I said slowly. It's about respect, honesty, and support. These people? You're my real family. So, you're cutting them off completely? Derek asked. For now, yes. Maybe someday they'll understand what they did wrong. Maybe someday they'll offer a real apology, but I won't hold my breath, and I won't let them back in until I'm ready. Any second? Thoughts about the house? Natalie asked. I smiled, looking around at the walls I'd painted, the floors I'd refinished, the home I'd built with my own hands and my own money. None whatsoever. This house represents everything I've worked for and everything I've learned about standing up for myself. Uncle Jarrell raised his glass again to new beginnings. The house keys sat on the coffee table, solid, real, and undeniably mine. My house, my victory, my new life.